Hi, everyone. It's me, Aaron Lamar, the coach. Today, we have a special guest. She's the author of Regulation and Co-Regulation, clinical social worker with 30 years of experience in the field. She's worked with child abuse investigators, hospital social workers, and she's also a school therapist. Am I right on that?
You are right.
All right, perfect. Ginger Healy, welcome to Coach's Sessions. So I'm going to ask you first question, but before we do, you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, my students, a little bit. They're very interested to hear.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, professionally, I think you've done a good job of letting everybody know I'm a clinical social worker and have experience in a lot of different fields within social work. But I also come to this work personally because I'm a mom of 4 kids, and our oldest son, we adopted him from a Romanian orphanage when he was 5 years old. And so what I learned really quick that I didn't know anything.
Mhm.
And I had to learn a lot about developmental trauma and about attachment needs, and how to help this little boy heal. And then I have 2 children that are neurodivergent. They are on the autism spectrum, and so it's been a journey learning how to help them as well and appreciate all their exceptional needs that they have. And so when I work and what I do, it does come from experience, in my work and in my professional life, but it really is molded and shaped by my personal life and what is going on inside my home with my children and finding resources for them as well. So, and I live in Salt Lake City, Utah.
All right, nice. Yes, I know it takes a special kind of person. My wife, she used to teach special ed for a few
Mhm.
years, and then I know it takes a lot of patience. I did it for 1 year, and I know it takes a special kind of person with a good heart to not only raise but to teach. Uh, Students with disabilities and suffer severe trauma. So I appreciate you
Oh.
very much.
Well,
I'm gonna.
I'm the first to admit that I have made a lot of mistakes and continue to make mistakes. So by no means am I would say, an expert. I'm figuring it
No
out as I
problem.
go along.
Yep, yep. We're still learning. Still
Yeah.
learning, especially. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to start off with my first question
Mhm.
here. So, what is your definition of trauma? So, how would you define trauma? I know for me, I would say anyone that's suffering any type of like maybe emotional, physical, or mental, or any type of abuse. Maybe they experience like maybe a really harsh background. Like for me, I was recently like arrested for a crime I didn't commit,
Mm.
and then I had to go have counseling for a little while, and I still get flashbacks, PTSD from when I was arrested. I have anxiety as well. But
Yeah.
what would be your definition of trauma?
Yeah, it's a great question and it should have a simple answer, but I never have a simple answer because I think it depends. I think exactly what you mentioned was a very traumatic experience for you. And so typically when I talk about trauma, I talk about 3 E's. And the first is the event, something happened. But the second E is the experience because that differs. 2 people can go into the same event but not experience it the same, right? And so that third E is the effect. So, for example, if you think about a fire, and there's the fireman and the person who was possibly in the fire, and then maybe a neighbor across the street, they're all there's this fire that is the same event, but the fireman, it's just a normal day at the job. The person in that fire, that could be extremely traumatic. And then the person across the street, they could be stressed about it, but it might not be traumatic for them. So I think it takes those 3 E's and that it depends. I really like what Dr. Gabor Mate says. He says it's not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happened. So he's talking about the nervous system. Was your nervous system so affected that now it's oversensitized or even undersensitized in shutdown? So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's different kinds of trauma too. I in my work focus on developmental trauma, which is the adversities that happen before the age of 18. And that's very different than like PTSD that could happen to an adult, because before the age of 18, that brain is continuing to grow and develop and change. And so whatever happens to it affects that development. So we call that developmental trauma.
I see. So, because I teach kindergartners and first grade as well as the older ones, like fourth and fifth grade. So, would you say like what the little ones are experiencing is even more crucial than the older ones in
I
terms of that growth?
I think it depends on
Hmm.
like what's going on in the home, what's going on with their possibly what happened to them in the womb. Were they exposed to anything that might sensitize their nervous system? Epigenetics. We are definitely affected by genes, and then of course our environment as well. So I think it depends. But you bringing up the point about the younger they are, that is something that I think is important to touch on, because what we do know is that the younger the person is and the more interventions that we surround that person with, the less risk they have for outcomes like relationship problems, learning disabilities, diagnoses later in life, like mental health diagnoses, depression, anxiety, anything like that. And physical health outcomes are impacted by early childhood adversity. And so we always want to intervene with a student as young and as early as possible. As we get older, we still have the chance to grow and heal and change. There's so much hope in that. But it is harder for us as adults to change than it is for a child. They're just growing and changing at a more rapid rate. So I guess I would say it
Hmm.
depends.
Oh yes, of course. That actually ties into my next question, which you kind of already touched on. But what advice for teachers? What's your advice for teachers who have students with severe trauma in their class? Like I know I work closely with our social worker. I work closely with the special ed teachers. But what advice would you have for teachers who have students who have severe trauma in the class, who maybe are getting abused at home, or who come to
Yeah,
school and they have a lot of baggage? What would be your advice for
yeah.
them?
Well, the good news here, well, there's a couple things I would say. First of all, we know that any teacher in any classroom, you can predict that at least 25%, one fourth of the students in your class have experienced adversity. And it could be of many different kinds. It could be abuse, it could be so many different things. Now, you don't have to know exactly who in your classroom has had abuse or adversity or trauma, and what they specifically have gone through. You don't need to know that. You can go into your classroom and just know there are students here that have been um, with challenges, struggles, trials, trauma, and they need trauma informed care. So you're going to be trauma aware, trauma sensitive, trauma responsive to every student in the classroom, because it won't hurt anybody. It's good for everybody. And it catches the kids that fall through the gaps, the kids that you don't know that they have had trauma, and they're masking it really well because they don't want anybody to know. They're ashamed. They're scared. We call those like silent sufferers. And trauma informed care catches them. It helps them because otherwise you wouldn't know. And so trauma informed care helps everybody. So I would say you need to become aware of what trauma does, how it impacts the brain and development and learning, and become trauma responsive, where you're implementing trauma informed strategies within the classroom. And that's a whole other talk for a whole other day, but there's so many things you can do, so many resources out there. And that's actually why I wrote that book, is because teachers need this information, and I wanted it to be really accessible and easy and understandable, because none of us in the classroom are likely neuroscientists. We don't need to be, but we can be trauma aware and sensitive and responsive to these kids and really help a lot of kids in these classroom. You'll see behaviors totally decrease because there won't be the need for the behaviors when we implement that kind of strategy and resource in the classroom.
Okay, speaking of the strategies, what are good coping skills for someone who has a traumatic past or experiencing stress? I know, like, one thing I do is like I breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and breathe out for 5 seconds. I think it's like 5 things you can see or 4 things
Yes,
you can touch. I do different
yes,
strategies, but what are some more skills that you have for someone?
yeah. So you mentioned deep breathing strategies, which are
Hmm.
good. They're not 100% of the time good for everybody. So one of the things that you want to try as a teacher is try these strategies out. And if they work, great. They'll mostly work. If they don't, try a different one. It works different for different kids. But deep breathing strategies, there are so many fun ones for kids. You also mentioned a grounding strategy, and I always recommend grounding strategies. And that's just where you're aware and noticing. We use grounding strategies when a student is kind of spacing out or daydreaming, or we label it like they're being lazy and they're daydreaming and they're deer in the headlights, but really they could be kind of shut down. And so a grounding strategy brings them back into the presence. And you can do it by talking about the senses. What are they noticing? They can notice a color. I often will there's different kinds of grounding. Physical grounding, where you're like sitting firmly on the ground or pushing against the wall where you can feel that pressure. There's soothing grounding, where you're just letting them know it's okay, I'm here. If you need a moment, you can go to the bathroom, you can get a drink, we can go on a walk. Just your tone of voice that's really soothing. Mental grounding, where you're bringing them back into the present by talking about, tell me the alphabet backwards, let's count backwards, where they actually kind of have to start thinking again and becoming present inside their bodies. So I would say also any tactile, textural, sensory work. So fidgets work that way, blowing bubbles, touching different textures, movement. Number one thing that really helps kids who are experiencing anxiety, we have these stress hormones in our body that build, and that creates that anxiety. We have to get rid of those stress hormones. You can do that through movement, walking, jumping. Recess is such a good way to get rid of stress hormones. You can do it by laughter. You can tell jokes in the classroom, creating a really playful atmosphere, but just letting them know, like, I'm here for you. You're not having to go through this alone. You're not in trouble. This is not your fault. We can do this. We can fix this. Setting the tone of emotional safety. Like, this is a safe place to have big, scary feelings. Feelings are okay. You can be mad. You can be sad. You can be afraid. You can be happy. There's a reason behind that feeling. We're going to figure it out and we're going to move through it. So saying, like, stop crying, that's not a big deal. Quit doing that. That's dismissing it. And it makes the stress hormones build. So you're actually doing the opposite of what you want to do. But if you can just set that atmosphere, like, it's okay to have these feelings. Let's name it. And we call that name it to tame it. It'll tame the feelings if we say it out loud, asking for help, talking about it. Those are all things that make anxiety more bearable and tolerable, and counterbalance the heaviness of it. I'm not saying we have a magic wand to wipe it away. It's learning the skills to manage it. And we can teach that in the classroom.
Of course, yeah. I think I tried a few techniques as well. Like we have a calm down corner
Yes,
and the thing, and we have where they have different stimulation items they can use, take their mind off things to calm themselves down. Those are
yes.
all good skills that you were talking about, which I'm definitely going to utilize because I teach physical education.
Oh,
Um,
physical education teacher. Listen,
mm,
I know that that is what you do, and that is where
mm,
you're really going to help kids. They need it, and they need it to be fun and safe
mm,
and not pressured, and you will see such good change. I'm sure you already have, I'm sure you're
mm,
doing a lot of those
mm.
things already.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like even today, like when the student was stressed, they had to run and calm themselves down. But the good thing is that she knew to go to the corner, and she knew exactly what to do to calm herself down and take her out of the moment. And I like to do more of that, and I hope
Yeah. And
hopefully it keeps going smoothly.
yeah, it's not a punishment, right?
Hmm.
It's that this is a safe space for you to work through this. Nobody's in trouble. It's not seclusion, and it's not like suspension, and it's not punishment. It's working through it, learning how to recognize it and manage it. So that's awesome.
Yes, of course. For next question for you, what resources are available for parents, friends who want to help someone they know or love experiencing trauma? Like maybe they can't afford, a counselor because it's too
Yeah.
expensive, or maybe
Yeah.
they don't have time to have their child, stay after school for extra help, or maybe they just don't know what resources are available to them.
Yeah.
But what resources are available?
There are so many resources available. And now, because of technology, we can do a lot of resources over the internet. There are support groups. The
Mhm.
Attachment and Trauma Network, attachedtrauma.org, has free support for parents and caregivers who have experienced trauma and or who are caregiving for a child who has trauma. We have a free podcast called Regulated and Relational, and that gives we have podcast episodes for teachers, we have podcast episodes for parents, we have a lot of overlap in between both of those. And there are so many good books out there available. And if you're like me, you don't have time to always sit and read a book. That I like to listen to my books on Audible when I'm in carpool or driving. So a lot of free resources. And in fact, if you would like, I can email you a resource sheet list sheet, and you can push that out to your listeners or to parents. You can reach out to me at ginger@attachedtrauma.org, and I can link you. We have a resource directory if you would like support, like through a therapist or a coach or anything like that. I can try to find one in your area. But all those resources through the Attachment and Trauma Network are free. And then we do have a conference in February every year. We have in person and we have virtual. So if you can come in person, that is really powerful to meet other people who are doing the same work and who have like-minded ideas and can network. And then if you can't come in person, which I completely understand, we have the virtual option as well. So lots of support and resources. The main thing is that you need to know you're not alone and that there is help available, and it gets really overwhelming. I can speak as a professional that it gets overwhelming, but I can speak as a mom. That the best thing that helped me out was my neighbor and friend who was kind of going through similar things, and so she knew she didn't judge me. She created this safe space for me to say, this is really hard. I don't know if I can keep going. And then she would say, come on, you can keep going. This is what you do. And then on days that she was having a hard time, I could be the strong one. But just having someone there who didn't judge me, that was the best thing that I ever have had in my life, was that support, that buffered that stress for me.
Oh yes, of course. I could definitely relate to that in a way, like having that one person that you can lean on, that just takes in and not to judge you, not to say anything negative. They just want you to they just want to hear you, listen to
Yeah.
you, and just be there for you in that moment. And then we could talk about things later and sort it out. But just be for me
Yes. But
there
for
and then.
right now, let me just give you a hug. Yep.
Yeah, of course. Well, I just got one more question for you here. If someone wanted you to speak at a
Hmm.
school or an event, or how would they be able to do so? Like, what's the process for that? Maybe you have like team members that maybe want to come out and do presentations, or maybe virtual for a school. What would be the process for that?
Yeah, we can do in person or virtual. You can reach out to me at ginger@attachedtrauma.org. That's my email. That's the best way to get a hold of me. But I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram at Ginger Healy LCSW. So you can reach out that way as well. Email and social media is the best way to get a hold of me. And I can troubleshoot that with you to find out if you need professional development or just need whatever you need. Yeah, we're here to help you figure that out as well.
Of course. Well, that's all the questions I had for you. That was really great. I love all the information you provided for it. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule in order to come on with me. But
Well,
yes,
it
is
was
there
an
anything?
honor. It was an honor, and thank you for what you do as well. You are in the, you are in it. You are boots on the ground, and that's where the work really is. So thank you.
Yes, of course. It's been a fun time so far this year. I just want to keep that going,
I love that.
and yeah. But thank you again. I won't take up too much of your time. I really do appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do. It's especially our kids that we go through the school that maybe going through a lot. They just need someone to be there for them. It's really really crucial and really important. And I'm very grateful for what you do, and I appreciate you.
That's awesome. You are more than welcome.
Of course. Well, thank you guys for joining us for Coaches Sessions. And thank you, Ginger Healy, for coming on. And we'll see you next time.